Hey YouTube. Alright, so we're going to look at the carburetor on this. You're going to have to forgive me because I'm going to be taping and working at the same time. So this is where your air filter will sit. Okay, we've got a couple bolts here and here holding on to the carburetor. And then there's another bolt here holding on to some of the actuators and stuff. The gas hooks back in here. Just taking that off so that we can see. This hose here is to take some crankcase gases out. This here is your automatic choke. Now what that does is when this thing's not running, it goes like this. And I don't know if we can see inside, but you can see the choke in there moving. So when it's off, the choke is on. And when it starts, it blows this vein out. And that opens the choke. Okay. And then this is just the return spring for the choke. You can see that it's attached back here. Okay. And we have this is off of your governor. There's only one speed on this particular motor. Okay, so your governor's back here. And basically what that is another vein. Well, there's either a little flywheel inside the sump, or there's a vein under here. And on this one it's a flywheel in the sump. So if the engine goes under load, then this will open up for more gas. And if it's running good and high, it'll slow down a little bit so it doesn't overspeed. It governs the speed, that's why it's called a governor. Most of you probably already know that. This is where the primer would go if there was one. This is your air intake tube, and there's just an O-ring sitting in behind here to hold that together. And your automatic choke is just held on by a little dimple there. Okay, so we're gonna see about keeping some picture and taking this thing apart. Alright, let's see what we can do with that. This thing hasn't been serviced in a while, so these bolts are quite happy to stay right where they're at. A lot of times these are just self-tapping screws. These ones have been Loctited, that's why they're so difficult. And then there'll be a couple of bolts in the back there. and you gotta watch the take off your governor. We're gonna disconnect the choke spring. What I generally try to do is, if it's something that can stay on the unit, I'll leave it on the unit. That way you don't forget it. Take off the governor spring. Okay. Well, I was kind of hoping to leave that vein on there, but we'll take it off. It's no big deal. And to get it off of your governor, all you have to do is pull down just a little bit, give it a bit of a twist, and it's off. Now there's going to be gas in this unless somebody ran it dry. We'll make some more adjustments here. Okay, maybe we'll come in a bit closer. All right, a little bit better. Okay, so like I said, you are going to have a bit of gasoline in there. You're going to want to have something to put that in. It's not going to be a whole lot. Generally what I'll try to use, there we go, is if you have a cap for a spray can of any sort, then you can use that pretty easy. Now if you have any kind of dermatitis or anything like that, gasoline will certainly make that a whole lot worse. So just be wary of that. It doesn't take long to dry your skin out. So there's no real magic to these. A couple little tricks you should know, but as for magic, there's nothing really. This is your float. This is what lets the fuel in and out, because your carburetor sits like this. So when your fuel is low, that opens up. And what that does is there's your valve where your fuel is. There's just a little needle in there. All it does is the needle closes, and then when this opens up, it pulls the needle out, gas comes in, and the float goes back up, the needle closes. So if you get a new kit, you should have that kind of stuff in your kit. When you buy a kit, a lot of times what they're used for is a couple of different types of setups for the carburetors. So don't be surprised if you have a couple extra parts. So we've got the gasket for the bowl. We've got the two gaskets for the carburetor. We've got the O-ring gasket that sits where the carburetor connects to the engine. And there's our needle. So to change your needle, little pin here. Pull the pin out. Okay, notice the specialty tool I used. Fingernail. There's your old needle. Now, here's your new seat. Let's see if that'll focus for us. That's just a piece of rubber. Okay. Now if you look very, very closely, the rubber's tapered. Okay. So on this side, the rubber's smooth. And on that side, the rubber's grooved. And if you look down inside, which you're not going to be able to see on camera, the smooth side is facing you. So, there is a tool that you can get. Just push that down, and you collect your old one. For your new one, what you do is you get a little tiny bit of oil, any kind of oil, as long as it's like motor oil, even transmission fluid will work. Put a little tiny dab of it on. What that'll do is that'll make sure that it seats properly. And then you want to find a drill bit that's just a little bit smaller than your seat. Put your seat in. And just make sure that goes in nice and flat. And you probably can't see it, but there's a little green seat in there. As for your needle, on here is a keyhole. Needle slides into the keyhole just like that. It's that simple. Okay. In this package comes a new rod for your float. Sometimes what will happen is these things won't be perfect. So if you get it in there and you find that your float doesn't move properly, then use your old one. So you set that back in place, and with this being plastic, there's no adjustment, but some of these you'll adjust your float. So down inside the center there, you see the jets. Just take something, push down inside, make sure the jets are clean. You always want to change that, because sometimes what will happen is with different temperatures, and if somebody puts the wrong additives in their fuel or whatever the case may be, these things will swell and you'll never get your bowl to fit properly or seal. It's just not worth the grief. You've already got it there, change it out. Okay, inspect your bowl, make sure that's good and clean inside. This unit's clearly always had nice fresh gas in it. Now, if you look at your bottom plug, you'll notice there are holes in it. Okay, you want to make sure that those are clear as well, because this is where fuel gets picked up, and there's a little hole in the center. Okay, so make sure those are clear, otherwise you've done all this work for nothing. There's a new gasket for that there. Take your old one out. If you leave old gasket on this and you put your new one on, it'll leak. I know some of you have done this before, and you know these things, but not everybody's done this. I'm trying to make it so everybody can do it. You just use a little razor blade, clean off the extra. Okay, so I've got that cleaned off, put the new one on. Now, some of these have little ports on the inside. So I just gotta look at this in the light. Okay, this one doesn't. But there are ports in the front. So I'm going to make sure that those are clean as well. And you also notice the choke has black on it. So you want to clean that as well. Any kind of carb cleaner will do the trick. And get it down in those ports as well. If you've got a really good carb cleaner, it'll do half the work for you. So here's the gasket that we're going to replace on here. So same idea. Get all the gasket off. Keep in mind this is aluminum, so it's pretty easy to mar it up. The flatter you can keep your blade, the less chance you have of marring it up. And if you use the sawing action gently, or even a circular motion, then you have less chance of marring it up. Everybody thinks, oh, it's a razor, I should be able to push through it. But generally what happens is when you do that, you'll overdo it. So this carb isn't too bad to do. Now, a couple things that you will notice is in my carb kit, I have extra parts. Okay? These are Welch plugs. I'll just pull them out for you. These are Welch plugs. They're dome shaped. Sometimes you'll have them in the bottom here, sometimes you'll have them on the side. But if you've cleaned your ports out, you shouldn't have to pull your Welch plugs out. But if you've cleaned this carburetor a couple of times and you still can't get this thing to run right, then you want to pull those Welch plugs out. It's difficult to do without marring anything. You'll want to have an awl or something like that, dig into it, pop it out, clean the port inside, and then you take a drift punch, lay it on top of that when it's in the back in its home, and then you punch it flat, and that'll be what locks it in place. And then if you want to take it one step further, make sure it's sealed, find your wife's cheapest nail polish and put the nail polish on top of it too, and that'll seal it. If you get a clear nail polish, less chance she'll notice. That's just a hint from me to you guys. Then you have these. That goes with that. And if there's an adjuster, which on this one it would have been there, then you can use that. And that's to adjust your jets. But like I said, these kits come with more than you need. Then you've got these foam things. Okay, all they are basically are dust caps for here. Okay, a lot of times if you take these screws out, you're going to end up doing all kinds of damage to the shaft, because sometimes they're punched flat in the back, or they've got high temperature Loctite on them, stuff like that. So if you don't need to change that, if this is in good shape, it doesn't matter if it's black, right? If it's dirty, it's dirty. But as long as they're in good shape and covering the hole from the dust, then you don't really need to change them. It's not a risk worth taking. There's another one here, right? Yeah, like this one here this is a whole other issue. You have to flatten the barbs down on that to get that one out. So a lot of times it's not worth the effort. Okay? So that's going to go back on here. We'll only go on the one way for this one. Okay. This hole doesn't line up with anything, but it doesn't matter. It's not used on this one. Okay. You put it this way. Still doesn't line up anything. But as you can see, like here's the flat and here's the flat, so it goes like that. Too easy. So I'm going to pull the old O-ring off, and I'll show you putting the new one on. Okay, so the new one just goes on here. Get your springs and stuff out of your way. So, put this back on. Look at that, I just knocked that down. It's alright. Put that back on, you just come in sideways, push it on, bring it up, and then you can get that one in place. That spring, the governor can go back on. Usually goes on easier than it comes off. Put your vane back on. Just make sure that it's in the spot it's supposed to be in. So, if you look here, there's also a couple bumps here and here, and that will hold your gasket in. So the back of this is dirty. I'm just going to take a second to clean it off. Difference between a good job and a great job, right? Does it need to be cleaned off to make it run right? No. This stuff That's all on the outside. But the cleaner you keep your engine, the better your engine cools and the longer everything will last. So for the few seconds it takes to do this, it's worth it. Small engine repair is a great thing to teach kids. Help them learn some confidence and how things work. It's not really hard if you've got somebody who can show them how it's done. So you can see here, it has those two eyelets. Those two eyelets fit up in these holes. Make sure I'm not putting it wrong. And there's a third one down here in the bottom. So that makes it a whole lot easier to line up. And this hose here connects there. So you want to make sure that's on there as well. Now there are carburetors that are harder to work on than that, but again, none of them are super mysterious. The secret is to be able to find all of the ports and make sure those are cleaned out. Some of them have some ports hidden in some really good spots. If you don't find that, you are going to get frustrated. But other than that, that's a Briggs 4-stroke carburetor start to finish. And you don't need to see me finish putting screws on or the air filter on. So, thanks for watching. See you next time.